Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger and my friends. The King of Fighters 15 has now been out for about a month. So obviously enough, very early in the game's lifespan to be sure, but it's not early enough that we can't notice some trends starting to form. And those trends seem to be Vanessa, Ralf, and Terry Bogard specifically. If you were to pick a top 3 strongest characters in the game, most people would say it's those exact 3 characters, and now the numbers are starting to bear that out. As just the other day, we had our King of Fighters 15 online tournament finals for the Japan region. They're starting up big tournaments, and, well, a lot of the characters in that tournament are those exact 3, Vanessa, Ralf, and Terry. Now, does that mean they deserve nerfs, they deserve to be crippled, they deserve to be brought down to everyone else's level? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but for now, first, let me give you some of the numbers of this tournament. We'll give you the top 32 and the top 8. So, working our way from the bottom to the top here, we have Vanessa. Vanessa made 12 appearances in the top 32, so almost half of the people in the top 32 picked Vanessa. Now, how about Terry? 14 people in the top 32 picked Terry. Now, once again, that's almost half the people, and this is a game with 39 playable characters, and almost half of them picked Terry. So that now leaves us with Ralf. Exactly how many people in the top 32 picked Ralf? 16 people. That means half, exactly half of the top 32 picked Ralf. So it's pretty easy to see where the winds are blowing on this. And just so you know, when we hit top 8 from this top 32, we have 3 Terrys, 4 Vanessa, and 5 Ralfs. So half of the top 8 has Vanessa, and over half of the top 8 has Ralf. So now that the numbers are plain enough to see, how exactly did we arrive at this situation? Like, even this grand finals you're seeing here, is one team of Vanessa, Terry, and Ralf, and one team of Vanessa, Ralf, and Dolores, so most of the culprits are here. I guess the first thing you can say, and this is very obvious, but it does need to be said, is these characters are definitely stronger than average. We do have the very big roster of 39 characters, absolutely yes, and not all characters are created equal. This happens in every fighting game, so that's not too much of a big deal in and of itself that some characters are stronger than others, especially in an early time frame of the game's lifespan. It's just the way it is. Find me the fighting game with the perfectly balanced roster, especially at launch. It's not going to happen. There are winners and there are losers. Some characters are just going to be stronger and some characters are just going to be a little bit weaker. The character does not always carry, the player kind of has a thing or two to say about it. Hell, there was even a whip in the top 8 of this tournament. A lot of people are considering right now in this early stage of the game's life, Whip probably the weakest character overall in the game, and Whip made a pretty decent appearance. A whip in the top 8 ain't nothing to sneeze at. But still, in the end, it's pretty clear Vanessa, Terry, Ralf, they're a cut above the rest of the competition. They seemingly are just a bit better than everyone else. And what are some of the reasons behind this? Well, perhaps the biggest one, really, in the end, is the damage. These 3 characters output damage in a way that other characters simply cannot. And I'm not just talking like you give them 5 meters and they do 1,000,000 damage. Like every character in the game can do that, right? I'm talking you just give them a singular EX and they start putting out numbers other characters can't reach. From anywhere from about half to about 2 bars, they're outputting damage other characters just cannot attempt to put out. They're just in a class in and of themselves. And dealing a lot of damage, that's one of the best things you can do in a fighting game. I know that sounds pretty obvious, but when it's there and it's easy to get with very low amount of resource, this is one of the things that makes these characters a giant threat. Besides the big damage, they also have tools that just make them oppressive in ways other characters necessarily either can't handle or also can't replicate themselves. Neither of these 3 characters in and of themselves were threats in the King of Fighters 14, but they've been buffed to a point where obviously they're threats now for sure. Like Vanessa, her jump CD, very oppressive. Her crouch light kick is some of the easiest hit confirms you'll ever see in this game. She can stance cancel a lot of her stuff for plus frames that just make her life a lot easier. Her corner carry is amazing. Her ability to convert off everything is amazing. Someone like Ralf is very difficult to contest in neutral because his buttons are godlike. His stand D, his heavy kick, is one of the most memed buttons in the game already. Because realistically, most characters can't contest it. They got to start taking risks to get around it. Someone like Terry. Terry's got one of the best toolboxes in the game. He can basically do everything, and his everything is really good. Not the least of which some of his prior handicaps, like needing charge for defensive actions, no longer exist. He can reversal whenever he wants. Almost all of his offense is incredibly low to near zero risk, and he effectively just plays every possible aspect of the game in an above average way. So if you want to say these guys are the three kings of the game, well, I wouldn't really necessarily even disagree with you. So herein comes the question, well, do they deserve to be nerfed? The fact that they're very prevalent in this tournament is simply because it's a tournament very early on in the game's life, and people want to win. Like, you don't go into a tournament not trying to do your best, right? And the reason there's so many people picking these characters is because it's easier to win with these characters. And for some of the characters, you know, they're not exactly difficult to get a hang of, you know. Not to offend any Ralf players out there, but Ralf, he's a little bit easier than average on top of the massive rewards you get for playing him. So you can't necessarily fault the people in the tournament for picking these characters because they want to win. And picking these characters, you don't got to put too much work and effort to learning them because this is very early on in the game's life, and they will give you a better chance to win. When would the first patch be? We don't really know. I'd assume there would be maybe some balance tweaks in the DLC patch. Team Garou could very well be launching with balance changes, and they do pay attention to what's going on, so these characters, perhaps a bit more than others, might be in the crosshairs. That said, if there is to be any nerfs, I hope they're not too damaging. I would still love these characters to be very strong even after the nerfs. Maybe take some of the hard edge off of it, sure, but don't cripple them. The simple fact of the matter is, when your character's very strong, it's fun, right? It's fun to play a character that can do a lot of things and win easier than not. And for characters like Vanessa, people have been waiting a very long time for Vanessa to be a strong character, and she's finally here, so immediately take that away from her, that'd be kinda nasty. So tone them down a little bit maybe, but don't just obliterate them with nerfs. That said though, once again, there's 39 characters in this game, right? So maybe they're not making appearances right now in the tournament scene, but you have the metrics, you can see the data as SNK. So the people who are not getting picked that much, they're not showing up much in tournaments, maybe give them the big buffs, right? It's one of the long-held beliefs in fighting games, in general balance theory, that the characters that suck, make them strong as the strong characters, don't make the strong characters weak like the weak characters, right? And hell, maybe some personal bias here, but someone like a Maxima, crank him up a notch, power him up, let's see where he can go. Outside of a couple very dedicated people, I've not seen anything out of Ramon. A lot of people are saying Ramon's like Whip, just in the absolute dirt dog worst bottom tier. So pump Ramon up, give him some big buffs. Let's see these lesser used characters rise to the top rather than just casting down the ones on top to their level. Now that said though, this tournament specifically is the herald of a few things. We know now maybe the more obvious top tier, but there's definitely some characters on the rise. There's more than a few Dolores. Out of the top 32, there's about 10 people picking Dolores. And also, while not too many Athenas, Athena has been used to devastating effect in this tournament. I'll put a link to the tournament in the video description so you can watch it yourself. But Athena, especially now and moving forward as more people start realizing what's up, Athena is absolutely a character to start watching out for. Now that some people are really and truly utilizing her potential, you're going to see what she's all about. So in the end, we're still very early on in the game's life. We're only a single month in. Things are going to change, right? Today's top tier might be tomorrow's mid tier. Tomorrow's mid tier might be the next weekend's top tier, right? Like, I personally feel like Ashe is going to be climbing the tier list a lot as people are starting to figure him out. Even though this is indeed a legacy game, there's still a lot more to be mined and a lot more to come to the surface. We are nowhere near done discovering everything that's possible just yet. And later this month, we're getting 3 new characters to add into all that mess, and we'll see how they turn out. I hope for the fans out there that Rock is at least decent, because I know there's a lot of Rock Howard super fans out there. So all that said, I am now going to throw it to you guys. What do you think about this? Are you okay with the top 3, I guess you could say, as they are? Do you want to see them left alone? Do you want to see them toned down a little bit? Or do you just want to see them outright crippled? So post that in the comments below, and otherwise, hey, well, we're at the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some King of Fighters.